What if I told you that one of Hollywood's most celebrated actors doesn't just collect cars? He races them, breaks world records in them, and has built a garage so extraordinary that it makes most professional racing drivers look like they're still saving up for their first hatchback. Idris Elba is a man who has portrayed detectives, warlords, and even a Norse god on screen. But behind the cameras, he's living a life that honestly sounds like something a Hollywood scriptwriter made up. Buckle up, because by the time we get to number 1 on this list, your jaw will be on the floor, and it is going to stay there. Who is Idris Elba, really? Most people know Idris Elba from the streets of Baltimore in The Wire, or stalking through the foggy corridors of a London police station as the iconic John Luther. Some know him as Heimdall in the Marvel Universe, standing guard at the Rainbow Bridge looking impossibly cool, which, to be fair, is just Idris Elba doing what Idris Elba does naturally. But here is what the casual fan doesn't know. Behind all the awards, the red carpets, and the blockbuster film sets, Idris Elba is a certified, deeply serious, borderline obsessed car enthusiast. Born on the 6th of September, 1972, in Hackney, East London, Elba grew up in a working-class household, where a car like the ones we're about to discuss would have seemed like pure science fiction. And yet, through sheer talent, relentless work ethic, and a personality that somehow makes every room feel smaller just by walking into it, Elba built himself into one of the highest-paid actors on the planet. And what did he do with that money? He bought cars. Glorious, thundering, obscenely fast cars. But Elba's relationship with automobiles goes far deeper than simply writing a check and adding another trophy to the garage. This man has competed in professional racing. He has drifted cars on television. He literally starred in a Netflix documentary series called Idris Elba: No Limits, where he pursued some of the most dangerous automotive and speed challenges on the planet. And we are going to get to this in full detail later, he went to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah and broke a land speed record in a Bentley. A Bentley, not a purpose-built missile with wings. A Bentley. Oh, and he's also a professional DJ, because apparently being jaw-droppingly handsome, an award-winning actor, a racing driver, and a record breaker wasn't quite enough to fill a Tuesday afternoon. Let's get into the collection. Jaguar F-Type R. Idris Elba owns a Jaguar F-Type R, and honestly, if there is one car on this list that makes perfect sense for the man, it is this one. The F-Type R is sleek, deeply confident, and makes a noise that can only be described as a large, angry animal that has just been told it cannot have dessert. The F-Type R is powered by a 5-liter supercharged V8 engine, producing 550 horsepower, and is capable of sprinting from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.5 seconds, with a top speed of 186 miles per hour. Now, consider that. This is a car you could theoretically drive to the supermarket. You wouldn't want to, but you could. What makes Elba's ownership of this car particularly fitting is the British connection. Jaguar is as British as a rainy afternoon, a cup of tea, and a queue for absolutely nothing in particular. And Idris Elba, despite spending years working in America, has never let go of his roots. The F-Type R is a car that represents exactly that balance. World-class performance wrapped in understated, quietly furious British elegance. The F-Type R starts at around $103,000 in the United States, and in the condition Elba keeps his cars, it is worth every single penny. Aston Martin DB9. If the Jaguar F-Type R is the sharp-suited junior executive at the British automotive firm, then the Aston Martin DB9 is the chairman of the board. Timeless, impossibly elegant, and with a presence that makes grown adults stop walking and stare. Idris Elba owns a DB9, and once again, this makes complete sense for a man who has been shortlisted to play James Bond so many times that the internet practically voted him into the role unilaterally. The DB9 is powered by a 6-liter V12 engine, producing 470 horsepower, capable of reaching 60 miles per hour from a standstill in just 4.6 seconds, and achieving a top speed of 183 miles per hour. Those are numbers that would have seemed absolutely outrageous from a road car 20 years ago, and they still command serious respect today. What set the DB9 apart from its competition when it launched in 2003 was not just the performance, but the sheer artistry of the thing. Hand-stitched leather, aluminum bodywork shaped like a sculpture, a cockpit that made you feel like the most important person in whatever city you happened to be driving through. A well-maintained DB9 today fetches anywhere between $60,000 and $120,000 at auction, depending on specification and mileage. For a car of this stature, that is genuinely a bargain. Idris Elba clearly agreed. Range Rover, Svato biography. Now, even a man who breaks land speed records for fun needs to occasionally pick someone up from the airport. And when Idris Elba needs to do that, he does it in a Range Rover SUV autobiography. Because if you are going to do something practical, you might as well do it in the most extravagant, overpowered, leather-lined practical vehicle that money can buy. The SV autobiography is the flagship model in the Range Rover lineup. The version where Land Rover's Special Vehicle Operations Division essentially asked themselves, what would happen if we took an already exceptional luxury SUV and then just kept going? The result is a vehicle powered by a 5-liter supercharged V8 engine, producing 557 horsepower, capable of 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, with a top speed of 165 miles per hour. The interior of the SV Ice autobiography is in a league of its own. We are talking about a vehicle with rear executive class seating that reclines to a near flat position, refrigerated compartments, massage seats, a panoramic roof, and enough technology to make a small space agency feel underfunded. The MSRP for the SV autobiography sits at around $230,000. For Idris Elba, this is the car you take when you want to arrive somewhere impressively without trying too hard, which, again, is just Idris Elba doing what Idris Elba does. BMW M6. Every great car collection needs at least one German missile that feels like it was built specifically to embarrass motorway traffic. And Idris Elba's garage delivers exactly that with the BMW M6. This is a car that wears the costume of a civilized grand tourer while secretly housing the soul of something that should only be driven on closed circuits with a helmet on. Think of it as a wolf in a very expensive hand-stitched wool suit. The BMW M6 is powered by a 4.4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 engine, producing 560 horsepower and 680 newton-meters of torque. It sprints from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.9 seconds and is electronically limited to a top speed of 155 miles per hour. Now, electronically limited is a very interesting phrase, isn't it? It implies that without that limiter, BMW's own engineers felt the need to have a quiet word with the car and tell it to calm down slightly. Remove it, and the conversation gets considerably more interesting, and considerably more illegal on public roads, so we will leave that right there. What Elba has always appreciated about cars, and this comes through clearly in his public discussions about his automotive passion, is the engineering, not just the speed, not just the prestige of the badge, but the actual craft behind the machine. The thought, the obsession, the decades of accumulated knowledge that go into making something that performs at this level while still being comfortable enough for a long motorway journey. The BMW M6 is precisely that kind of achievement. It is the product of decades of motorsport expertise, filtered through BMW's M division, arguably the greatest performance car department in the history of the automobile, and distilled into something you can genuinely drive every single day without destroying your spine or your sanity. It blends luxury and performance in a way that very few manufacturers have ever truly mastered before or since. New, the M6 commanded around $113,000. A used example in excellent condition today still commands serious money, and rightly so. In a garage packed wall-to-wall with British icons and Italian drama, this Bavarian interloper not only earns its place, it quietly reminds everything else in the room exactly who built the engine in the original McLaren F1. Think about that one. Porsche's 911 Turbo S. Here is an interesting contrast for you. While Rowan Atkinson, another famous British celebrity car collector who has appeared on this channel before, do check that out, has publicly stated that he could live without a Porsche, Idris Elba has gone in the completely opposite direction and acquired what is arguably the greatest version of the world's most famous sports car, the Porsche 911 Turbo S. The 911 Turbo S is powered by a 3-liter twin-turbocharged flat-six engine, producing 640 horsepower and 820 newton-meters of torque. It fires from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.6 seconds. 2.6. That is faster than it takes most people to read this sentence. The top speed is 205 miles per hour, and the all-wheel drive system ensures that absolutely none of that performance is wasted. What makes the 911 Turbo S such an extraordinary achievement is the fact that it is also genuinely comfortable, practical enough to use daily, and so refined that you could drive it for 6 hours straight without arriving at your destination, feeling like you've been in a tumble dryer. It starts at around $210,000 and represents perhaps the single most complete performance car available at any price point on the market today. Idris Elba owning one is completely unsurprising. What would be surprising is if he didn't. Ford Mustang Shelby GT500. And now for something completely different. Among all the European sophistication and British heritage in Idris Elba's garage, there sits a car that is about as subtle as a thunderclap at a library. The Ford Mustang Shelby GT500. All 550 supercharged horsepower of it, wrapped in aggressive American muscle car bodywork that looks like it was designed by someone who had never heard the word restraint, and frankly, never wanted to. The Shelby GT500 is powered by a 5.2-liter supercharged V8 engine that produces 560 horsepower and 813 newton-meters of torque. It covers 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.3 seconds and has a top speed of around 180 miles per hour. This is a car that makes no apology for what it is. It is loud, dramatic, theatrical, and absolutely magnificent for exactly those reasons. It's also worth noting that Elba's appreciation for American muscle makes complete sense when you remember that this is a man who spent years living and working in the United States, absorbing American culture so completely that half of America was genuinely shocked to discover he was British. The Shelby GT500 carries an MSRP of around $70,000, which, compared to almost everything else on this list, feels like finding a $50 bill in an old jacket. Brilliant car, brilliant value, absolutely no chill whatsoever. We love it. Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon AMG. At number 4, we arrive at a vehicle that has become the universal symbol of celebrity automotive taste. The car that appears in more rap videos than any other single vehicle on the planet. The machine that has somehow managed to be both a genuine off-road workhorse and the most conspicuous status symbol in the history of the automobile. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon AMG. Now, before anyone rolls their eyes and says this is just a celebrity cliche, stop right there, because Elba's version is the full AMG specification. And that means we are talking about a 4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 engine producing 577 horsepower, capable of launching this enormous brick-shaped machine from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds. A G-Wagon, 4.5 seconds. The aerodynamics of a garden shed doing 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. The engineers at AMG clearly have a wonderful sense of humor. The G-Wagon AMG starts at around $156,000 and can climb to well above $200,000 depending on options and specification. Elba has been photographed in his G-Wagon on multiple occasions, and it suits him perfectly. Imposing, unapologetically large, and commanding every single road it travels on. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Bentley Continental GT. We are now entering the truly rarefied territory of this collection. And number 3 sets the scene beautifully for what is coming. The Bentley Continental GT is one of those cars that exists in a category almost entirely of its own creation. A vehicle that combines the performance of a genuine supercar with the interior luxury of a 5-star hotel suite, all wrapped in bodywork that has been described, repeatedly and correctly, as one of the most beautiful things ever to roll off a production line. The Continental GT is powered by a 6-liter twin-turbocharged W12 engine, producing 626 horsepower and 900 newton-meters of torque. It reaches 60 miles per hour in 3.6 seconds and has a top speed of 207 miles per hour. Jeremy Clarkson, who knows a thing or two about Grand Tours, once raced a Continental GT against a Rolls-Royce and made the Rolls look like it had somewhere to be, but wasn't in any particular hurry to get there. High praise from a man who doesn't exactly hand out compliments freely. The Continental GT carries an MSRP of around $230,000, though heavily optioned examples regularly exceed $300,000. But here's the thing about Idris Elba and Bentley. This is not just a casual relationship. This is not just a man who bought a beautiful car and parked it in his garage. Elba and Bentley share a connection that is deeper, faster, and considerably more dangerous than a standard customer relationship. And that brings us to number 2, Lamborghini Aventador. Before we get to the most extraordinary entry on this list, we need to talk about the Lamborghini Aventador, because no collection of this magnitude, no garage assembled by a man with this level of automotive passion would be complete without an Italian supercar that sounds like the apocalypse arriving at 6,000 revolutions per minute. The Aventador is powered by a naturally aspirated 6.5-liter V12 engine, producing 740 horsepower and 690 newton-meters of torque. It launches from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds and has a top speed of 217 miles per hour. The engine note, and this is important, is not something you hear so much as something you experience with your entire body. It is one of the last great naturally aspirated supercar engines in production, and in an era where turbocharged engines are taking over everything, the Aventador's V12 is an absolute masterpiece of mechanical drama. The Aventador carries an MSRP of around $420,000, though fully optioned examples have breached the $500,000 mark with minimal effort. Elba has spoken publicly about his love for cars that communicate with the driver, machines that feel alive, that demand your full attention and reward it with an experience that nothing else on earth can replicate. The Aventador does exactly that, every single time. But extraordinary as it is, the Aventador is not the most remarkable entry in this collection, not even close, because number 1 is something else entirely. The land speed record Bentley Continental GT. In 2015, Idris Elba traveled to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Wendover, Utah, a vast, blindingly white expanse of ancient lake bed that has served as the world's most legendary speed venue for over a century. And he attempted to break the flying mile land speed record for a production car. And he did it in a Bentley Continental GT. Now let's just pause on that for a moment. The Bonneville Salt Flats, land speed record, in a Bentley. This is not a purpose-built streamliner with a jet engine bolted to the back. This is a car that you can walk into a Bentley dealership and order with a color-coordinated interior and a personalized gear knob. And Idris Elba drove one to over 206 miles per hour across a salt flat in the middle of Utah and broke a world record. The man is not normal. He is simply not a normal human being, and we should all accept that. The record attempt was documented in the Netflix series Idris Elba, No Limits, and watching it is a genuinely breathtaking experience. The preparation involved was extraordinary. Bentley's engineering team worked extensively on the Continental GT used for the attempt, which was based on their standard production platform, but modified for the specific demands of a high-speed record run. The car that Elba piloted to that record was powered by Bentley's 6-liter W12 engine, the same fundamental architecture as the road car, producing power figures that Bentley modified significantly for the attempt. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is the context. Elba is not a trained racing driver in the traditional sense. He did not come up through a junior Formula series. He did not spend years developing his craft on circuits across Europe. He is an actor from Hackney, East London, who decided that breaking a land speed record sounded like a reasonable thing to do with his time off between film shoots. And then he went and did it. The record that Elba broke that day on the Bonneville Salt Flats stood as a testament not just to his courage, because, make no mistake, traveling at over 200 miles per hour in any vehicle requires a very specific relationship with the concept of your own mortality, but also to Bentley's engineering excellence and to the unique character of a man who simply refuses to do anything at half speed. The Bentley Continental GT used for the record attempt is arguably the most valuable and certainly the most historically significant car associated with Idris Elba's name. A standard Continental GT begins at around $230,000. A record-breaking example with this kind of provenance and documented history, the value becomes almost impossible to calculate because there is only one of them. There will only ever be one of them. And the story attached to it is the kind that car collectors spend their entire lives hoping to own a piece of. Elba himself has spoken about what that day meant to him, not just as an achievement, not just as a line item on an already extraordinary life resume, but as a genuine expression of who he is. A man who grew up in Hackney with nothing handed to him, who built everything from scratch through talent and sheer force of will, standing on a salt flat in Utah, having just broken a world record in one of the world's most beautiful automobiles. If that is not a story worth telling, nothing is. And there you have it, the car collection of Idris Elba. A garage that runs from a supercharged British sports car all the way to a land-speed, record-breaking Bentley, with enough horsepower in between to power a small country. What makes Elba's collection so compelling is not just the cars themselves, extraordinary as they are, but the story of the man behind them. This is not a collection assembled for appearances. It is not a garage full of untouched investments wrapped in plastic and pointed at the wall. These are cars that have been driven, raced, pushed to their limits, and genuinely loved by a man who understands exactly what they are capable of. From Hackney to Hollywood, from the streets of Baltimore at Stringer Bell to the salt flats of Utah at over 200 miles per hour, Idris Elba has lived a life that most people would struggle to invent. And at the heart of it, running through everything like a thread of high-octane fuel, is a passion for automobiles that is as authentic and as serious as anything you will find in the world's most celebrated private collections. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Idris Elba's incredible car collection, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we have got more extraordinary celebrity garages, record-breaking auction stories, and the hidden histories behind the world's most valuable automobiles coming very soon. You do not want to miss a single one.